Hello and welcome back to the channel. Right. Today we're looking at something genuinely mental. The British military looked at a 7-ton tank and asked a simple question. What if we made it fly? Not hover, not jump, actually fly. Inside a wooden glider, then crash land behind enemy lines and roll straight into battle. This sounds like something a 5-year-old would draw. Tanks with wings. Ridiculous. But Britain actually built it. And on D-Day, these flying tanks landed in Normandy and started killing Germans before the beach landings even began. This is the Tetrarch, the only Allied tank to fly into combat during the Second World War. And honestly, the more you learn about this, the more insane it gets. To understand why Britain strapped tanks to gliders, you need to understand the problem with airborne operations. Paratroopers were incredibly useful. Drop them behind enemy lines, seize bridges, capture key positions, cause chaos before the main invasion arrives. But paratroopers had one massive weakness. They had no heavy weapons. A man jumping from a plane can carry a rifle, maybe a machine gun. Definitely not an anti-tank gun. And absolutely not a tank. So what happens when paratroopers meet enemy armor? They die. Quickly. A German panzer could roll through a paratrooper position, and there was almost nothing they could do about it. The British learned this lesson the hard way. In early airborne operations, lightly armed paratroopers were slaughtered by German armored counterattacks. Something had to change. The idea was radical. What if we could deliver tanks to paratroopers? Not after the battle, during the battle, landing alongside them from the sky. The problem was obvious. Tanks are heavy. Tanks don't fit in planes. Tanks definitely don't have parachutes. But tanks might fit in gliders. Gliders were already being used to deliver troops and light equipment. They were silent. They could land in fields. They didn't need runways. What if someone built a glider big enough to carry a tank? One man decided to find out. His name was General Frederick Browning, commander of British airborne forces. He wanted a flying tank, and the military was going to give him one. The tank chosen for this insane mission was the light tank Mark 7, better known as the Tetrarch. Now here's the thing. The Tetrarch wasn't designed to fly. It was designed in the 1930s as a normal reconnaissance tank. Vickers built it for speed and mobility. It weighed just 7.5 tons. That's incredibly light for a tank. A German Panzer IV weighed 25 tons. The Tetrarch was fast. 40 miles per hour on roads. It could keep up with trucks. But it was weak. The armor was only 14 millimeters thick. A heavy machine gun could penetrate it at close range. German anti-tank guns went through it like paper. By 1942, the Tetrarch was obsolete. Too weak for tank battles. Too vulnerable for reconnaissance. The army was ready to scrap the whole fleet. Then someone had a brilliant idea. The Tetrarch was useless against tanks, but it was perfect for airborne operations. Why? 3 reasons. First, it was light. Light enough that a glider might actually carry it. Second, it was small. Compact enough to fit inside a cargo space. Third, there were loads of them. Britain had hundreds of Tetrarchs sitting in depots doing nothing. Against paratroopers with no anti-tank weapons, the Tetrarch would be devastating. Against soft targets like trucks, infantry, and artillery, it would dominate. It didn't need to fight panzers. It needed to support airborne troops until the main army arrived. The military approved the project. Now they just needed a glider big enough to carry a tank. And that glider would become one of the most remarkable aircraft of the entire war. The glider was called the Hamilcar, and it was absolutely massive. Imagine a wooden aircraft the size of a small airliner. No engine, just wings, a fuselage, and prayer. The Hamilcar measured 20 meters long with a wingspan of 30 meters. It could carry up to 8 tons of cargo, just enough for a Tetrarch tank with a bit of room to spare. The whole nose section hinged open. The tank would drive straight in through the front, sit in the cargo bay, and be locked down for flight. Getting it into the air was another challenge. The Hamilcar couldn't take off by itself. It had to be towed by a 4-engine Halifax bomber. The bomber would drag the glider into the sky, fly it over the target, then release it. From that point, the Hamilcar was on its own. A 30-meter wooden aircraft carrying a 7-ton tank, silently gliding toward enemy territory. The pilot had one chance to land. No engine, no second attempt. Find a field, line up, and pray. Landing was violent. The Hamilcar would hit the ground at 70 miles per hour. There was no runway, just grass, mud, trees, and sometimes German soldiers shooting at you. The nose would swing open. The tank crew would already be inside the Tetrarch with the engine running. Within seconds of landing, the tank would roll out and start fighting. It sounds impossible. It sounds like something from a film. But they actually did it. June 6th, 1944. D-Day. The largest invasion in history. While American and British troops stormed the beaches, something remarkable was happening inland. Hamilcar gliders were crash landing across Normandy, and Tetrarch tanks were rolling out to fight. The 6th Airborne Division had a critical mission: secure the eastern flank of the invasion, capture bridges, destroy German artillery, hold until reinforcements arrived from the beaches. They needed tanks, and tanks they got. 8 Tetrarchs flew into Normandy that day. 8 tanks that appeared from nowhere, deep behind German lines. The psychological impact was enormous. German defenders had prepared for paratroopers. Lightly armed men they could overwhelm with armor and firepower. They were not prepared for British tanks appearing in fields kilometers from any road. One Tetrarch knocked out a German half-track within minutes of landing. Others provided crucial fire support as paratroopers attacked fortified positions. Not everything went perfectly. Some gliders landed in the wrong place. One Tetrarch crashed through a hedge and got stuck in a ditch. Another landed so hard the tank was damaged. But enough of them worked. Enough to make a difference. Enough to prove the concept. German commanders reported British armor operating far behind the front lines. They couldn't understand how tanks had appeared in areas with no roads or bridges. The answer was flying through the sky above them. They just didn't believe it. Let's be honest. The Tetrarch had serious problems. The armor was pathetic. German anti-tank guns could destroy it easily. By 1944, even German infantry had weapons that could penetrate it. The 2-pounder main gun was obsolete. It couldn't harm German tanks. It was only useful against soft targets. Reliability was questionable. The steering system was unusual and prone to breaking. The suspension was fragile. Maintenance in the field was difficult. And the glider landing was genuinely dangerous. Several Tetrarchs were destroyed or damaged in crashes. Crews were injured before they even reached combat. After D-Day, the Tetrarch saw limited action. At Arnhem during Operation Market Garden. In a few other operations, but the tank was clearly obsolete. By 1945, the Tetrarch was being replaced by the American M22 Locust, which could also fit in a Hamilcar glider. So was the Tetrarch a failure? Not exactly. It proved that airborne armor was possible. It provided fire support when paratroopers desperately needed it. It shocked German defenders, who thought they were only facing infantry. Most importantly, it showed what British engineers could achieve when given an insane requirement: make a tank fly. And they bloody well did it. The Tetrarch was never a great tank. Too light, too weak, too obsolete by the time it saw combat. But it flew. Stuffed inside a wooden glider, towed by a bomber, released over enemy territory, crash-landed in a field, and rolled into battle. That's properly mental. When someone told the British they needed flying tanks, they didn't laugh. They built them. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. We've got more mad British weapons to show you. See you in the next one.